In this video, I want to explain to you why Gen Z should avoid corporate careers, right? I've worked for over 10 years at some of these major banks, Goldman's, HSBC, Morgan Stanley, and I know what it's like to be in that corporate environment, and I want to help Gen Z make the right decisions in their life, right? Because, increasingly the salaries you're getting paid by these companies, they might be relatively high compared to other office jobs, but they're still not that high, particularly when the tax is high, for these high cost of living areas. If you want to work in New York, London, places like that, then you've got the high living costs, particularly now with the rate of inflation. And then you've got this type of social dysfunction that can occur at the work environment, like cancel culture, feminism, liberalism, things like that, woke culture that can make working in a corporate environment not so nice, particularly if you're a man or you have conservative beliefs, right? So there's lots of things to consider here. So I want to try to help Gen Z navigate this scenario in this video. And we're going to look at some of the pros and cons about working in corporate careers and consider how Gen Z is being impacted by this. Right. In this first case, I want to talk about this article from Forbes, right? So we have Gen Z and it says they're opting out of the traditional corporate careers and climbing the corporate ladder. And I've put out a few videos on climbing the corporate ladder, so you can check that out for a bit more detail on that. But let's see about this video, what else we can learn here. So first it explains here there's relentless demands of the modern workplace, right? Typically you'd have to, of course, answer emails and work during the workday, but sometimes you might have a work phone like I had at some of these major banks that I mentioned earlier. And I'll be required to maybe answer a few emails outside of work hours, late evening, early morning, things like that. And then we have Gen Z talking about, having the highest level of burnout, which is dealing with mental health issues due to being overworked. And I know it's easy to kind of look at this and go, oh, they're being weak. They're not as tough as previous generations. But the truth is the baby boomer generation that came before had quite an easy life. They had stable jobs that they'd be in for 10, 20 years. They could maybe make one or two career moves. They'd be getting paid a salary that was high enough to pay for one or two houses, have one house to live in with their family and a rental property. One person's income, one man's income could pay for his wife and his kids. It was a completely different reality. You also had a stronger sense of community, family, and all these other things. People don't have any of that, and they're just basically work slaves now. They're wage debt slaves. A lot of their salary going to pay tax, high living costs, student loans, things like that. So it's understandable why many people would be dealing with the burnout that has been mentioned here. The next thing I want to point out is people are more keen to be their own boss, right? It's kind of draining and jarring to deal with these baby boomer bosses, in some cases feminist bosses, girl power types in middle management and senior management, and these type of liberal, woke, management who dictate and down to you and speak down to you. And most people are looking for a lot of autonomy. They don't want to deal with this type of environment. They want to be their own manager, their own boss. Many people looking up to for their own meaning and purpose. And sometimes this can come across a bit gimmicky, right? When you see someone who might start a side business and they might be working in a corporate job, but their side business is making handmade soaps or selling candles and things like that. And we might think, oh, that's a gimmick, that's a joke. Some people making nutrition videos, selling cookbooks and things like that. But I think in a healthy functioning society, not everyone is a corporate drone, and people really shouldn't be dedicating that many hours just to work for a job that kind of props up a system that is treating you very badly and not giving you much to live for. So having those kind of side hobbies that do make a bit of purpose, who do give a bit of purpose, even if they're not making a lot of money, does make a lot of sense, and it makes sense why many people in Gen Z and millennials are focusing on those these days. Now, another thing people are looking for is flexibility, right? People want to work maybe 4-day work weeks, part-time roles, job sharing, working flexible hours, things like that, working remotely. I'm sure you're familiar with that. So this is really what people are looking for, because if they realize most corporate jobs are not going to pay that well, they're not going to be able to live even the standard middle class life in previous generations, then of course people are going to be thinking, well, what's the alternative here? How can I live the life I want? And if that compromise means working part-time and earning a bit less and then focusing on my side business, and when that works, then I can maybe balance the two, the part-time job and the side income. Maybe I'm working remotely, so I have a bit more time to spend with family. People are looking for some kind of fair deal, because you're not getting a fair deal if you're working even a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 6 or 12, 14-hour days, even in a relatively high-paying job. It's still not a really good deal. You're burning yourself out. You're not getting paid enough even to have like basic lifestyle benefits. So it makes sense why people are pursuing flexibility and they want to be their own boss these days. And this is this last little section of this article, right? People want to be their own boss. They're looking at the creator economy, the gig economy. I've mentioned in some of my videos, people, as it says here, they want to be more innovative, independent, focus on their self-determination, and really find something that pays well, that is in line with their passion, right? So those are the two P's, right? Your passion and the profit. And lots of people just focus on, okay, how can I profit by working a corporate job? Then they get depressed. It impacts their mental health, their physical health, their relationships, and they'd probably be happier being their own boss. And something I try to help my clients in my coaching service, there is a link in the description below, in the description of the YouTube video. Through my career coaching, I try to provide people with helping them work towards finding one of those solutions that are unique to them. Because the truth is, there's no group solution. If there was a group solution, it'd be the government or all major corporations getting together, or a mass movement of employees, of workers, like a trade union, a labor union, to change these circumstances. But I don't think they've been that successful. And you've seen the left wing and the right wing not really change these circumstances. So all the solutions will come at an individual level, and that's how I try to, coach people and understand that, like, we can't change the way the country works, the way the entire workforce works. If you're working for a company and they're dragging you back to the office and you prefer to work remotely, work from home, maybe think about looking for another job and things I can help with, looking for another job, or maybe developing your own skills and working on a freelance basis. So there's all sorts of alternatives you need to consider. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how many people who are in Gen Z are becoming NEETs, right? Now, what is a NEET? A NEET is someone who is not in employment, not in education, and not in training. So NEET means not in employment, education, or training. If you're a guy, you've probably seen many times online this meme of being a NEET, Pepe meme, things like that, Wojak memes where someone's a NEET and they're not working, they're just basically, it sounds kind of bad, but they might be a grown adult man and they might be living with their parents still, maybe pursuing higher education, don't really plan on getting a high paying job, just want to chill and relax, maybe smoke or drink or play video games, things like that, drink energy drinks and play video games. It's become a little bit of a joke, but there is something to be said about this, right? NEETs are kind of winning in life. They're kind of, when I say NEETs are winning in life, what do I mean by that? So you met many people who are NEETs and they're living the same lifestyle that you or I would if they were working a full-time job. And what do I mean by that, right? So you might have someone like me or you who maybe works in an office, deals with office politics, high stress situations, getting paid but getting taxed quite highly, dealing with high inflation and living costs. And we might be stressed out, and our quality of life, maybe living in a small apartment, not having enough maybe finances to on a sustainable way fund a family, things like that. So in those cases, you do have these extreme situations where, similar situations, you're working so hard, not getting much out of it. So it makes sense for people to quote unquote give up and not work at all and maybe live off government benefits and just chill and relax, because they kind of have a easier life and a less stressful life, and it's not like you can gain that much from working a office job in many cases. Statistics that are quite interesting. In over 500,000, in Spain alone, over 500,000 are not studying or working. In the UK, almost 3 million are now classified as economically inactive. So those are quite high numbers, right? 500,000 in Spain, 3 million in the UK. These are very high numbers. And I know if you're maybe not in the NEETs, I've been on some of these internet forums and things like that. I know there's many people in America, many men in America and the UK and some European countries, they're just not working. They're just chilling at home. They're playing video games. Like I say, they're just maybe eating fast food and junk food and just chilling and not doing much. They're like, what's the point of putting in an effort? If you get a high paying job, you'll deal with high tax and high inflation. If you get married, there's like a 50% chance of divorce. If you have kids, they're going to be in a public school where they'll be brainwashed with liberal, feminist, woke ideology and propaganda. So it makes sense why they might be giving up. And it mentions these adult milestones are kind of out of reach. Due to all these circumstances, it makes sense why they're giving up and why a corporate career might not make sense. You might think a corporate career is this dreamland when actually it's not, and that's Gen Z and some millennial are waking up to this stark reality that they're not going to have the good quality life, even the basic middle class life of previous generations. So then it has this other article where it says Gen Z and millennials are struggling Managers need to pay attention. So in these first two paragraphs, just briefly, right, it mentions they're dealing with mental health issues, they're missing work, they're burnt out, they're calling in sick. And it's because, they're not really finding any purpose in their life from the work, right? People can't work like meaningless drones forever on the basis that they're getting paid. People always have to convince themselves, okay, I'm doing work in the office that I find boring, but I'm getting paid well, so I'll just continue doing it. And it's like meaningless work. You're spending 8 hours of your day doing things you might hate or really don't like just for the money. It's hard to kind of numb all your emotions and all your resentment for the job for 8 hours a day just to do it for the sake of doing it. So that's why you got like a lot of people who are kind of a bit frustrated right now. Now in this section, it talks about how Gen Z and millennials in certain cases they're struggling to build an identity around work. They've got like bad bosses that ignore them. They're actively disengaged. They're dealing with well-being issues and more likely to have depression, right? So a lot of people don't want to address this point, right? That you're working in a corporate career and over time, you develop your personal identity gets attached to whatever your job identity is. Your job title, climbing the corporate ladder, maybe going from analyst to VP, vice president to director, managing director. But you're always dealing with this anxiety and this depression of like, okay, maybe you don't like your job, it's not really going anywhere, you got job instability, lots of layoffs going on right now. You might have issues where you're working hard and you're doing good quality work, but your manager's gaslighting you, they're lying to you, they're being toxic, they're having a go at you for no reason because maybe they do want to fire you down the line, you're not one of the manager's favorites. So this is what I mean, like people go to work, but then all of a sudden they got to deal with all these other things. They got to suck up to management. They got to parrot the right woke ideology or liberal ideology. They've got to suck up to whatever the latest your new employee is. They've got to agree with their political opinions, watch the same TV shows as co-workers, go to after work events. All these things, they like your identity as an individual ends up having to be constricted to fit whatever the corporate identity is. And people get burnt out from that, and that can lead to anxiety and depression, particularly when at any moment you could be fired and subject to a layoff, particularly during a recession like right now. And then it can be even more demotivating, right? Now, another case I want to cover here for you is about Goldman Sachs, right? Goldman Sachs is right now having quite a low intern acceptance rate. The intern acceptance rate has fallen by 30%. That's quite a significant drop. That means people at the junior level, the Gen Z guys, men and women are going to find it difficult to find a job at some of these top companies. They're not hiring as much. Not only are they firing and laying off people at more senior levels, they're not accepting people at more junior levels. There are less jobs available. Then it mentions here investment banking is a tough industry. Goldman Sachs has only an acceptance rate of 0.8%. So that's quite low, right? So imagine you're applying to work at Goldman Sachs and they're getting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of applications. You've got less than 1% chance of getting a job there. I've worked at Goldman Sachs, as I might have mentioned here. So I've worked at Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, a few other banks. So this is a stark reality where, you're dealing with insurmountable, unrealistic pressure on your head to get a high paying job, to be able to buy your own house, to even pay for basic lifestyle living costs. And particularly now with social media and everything becoming so image driven, maybe to look a particular way, to go on those travel trips abroad and for your sake of your social status, buy certain houses on the basis of your social status. These are really impacting people. They don't have a future, right? They don't have a financially secure future, a social status, in a sense, secure future, a community and society stable future. And this will lead to quite civil unrest and social instability over time. But right now, it's kind of difficult for Gen Z to find a way and a solution out of this system. Now, this covers it in a bit more detail too, right? You've got this promised land of stable, high-paying jobs. So stable, high-paying jobs kind of don't exist anymore, right? Recent grads, it's falling apart for recent grads. And if we scroll through this in a bit of detail, so here in this article, it will go through, tech, consulting and finance. So they're harder to secure. The jobs are harder to secure. Many people, students, they're not finding full-time jobs. So they're just focusing on internships. They're expanding their job search to other sectors. They're dealing with a lot of layoffs. They're hiring in tech, seems to be biggest hit. So it's things like that, right? So it's very difficult. Imagine you're trying to work in these top high-paying careers, tech, consulting, and finance, and you just are stuck in internship hell. You're just going through one internship after the other. And there's layoffs, so you don't know if your job's secure. So it's very difficult for Gen Z right now. You can see here, right, Citigroup are dealing with lots of layoffs, 20,000 layoffs. That's crazy over the next 2 years. JP Morgan is focused on a bit of hiring. Deutsche Bank is cutting jobs, 3,500 jobs being cut there. So you've got major job cuts in the finance industry. So, they're not going to be hiring a lot of more people if they're firing these people. So you've got to think it through. The industry, what I realized about the finance industry, even though there are still good job opportunities available and they're always growing areas like maybe algorithmic trading, some areas of AI and tech in the finance industry, crypto industry, things like that are growing. But overall, I would say the finance industry is constantly consolidating itself. Big finance companies are buying small finance companies. They're constantly being more efficient, offshoring jobs, outsourcing jobs to lower cost locations like India, hiring less people in middle management. It's really an industry that is getting smaller and smaller. Even at the same time, it's weird because it's getting bloated with more bureaucracy and layers of management in some senses. But in lots of senses, you're just like, it's just getting smaller. They're just hiring less and less people to do more and more work until they hit their breaking point and get stressed and have mental breakdowns. And that's why you do see that in other news articles I've covered in my other videos. Next, I want to talk about the working hours here, right? So the working hours for investment banks really can vary. And if we just look at which banks have the highest working hours for investment banks. So even if you're in Gen Z, you're considering corporate careers, you can see how ridiculously high the working hours can be. And I would say this is actually lowballing the amount. Typically, I would say for investment banking careers, strictly investment banking, not the support roles like HR in investment banking and operations in investment banking, where you might have 60 to 70 hour work weeks. If you want those high paying $200,000 a year investment banking jobs, typical investment banking analyst jobs, VPs, associates, directors, you will be working like 80 to 100 hour weeks, right? So that top end that is here for Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs really is true for most of these banks. I don't know, they have slightly lower hours, but I would think that number is not realistic. So I've worked at some of these companies, as I mentioned earlier, Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, and I would think that is accurate, 80 to 100 hours. So if you're Gen Z and you want to work these type of jobs, just be conscious of the hours you might be expected to put in. This is a stark reality that many people have to deal with, right? They're talking about working hours. They want to work in investment banks, Gen Z, some millennials too. You want to be earning a high earning salary. But the question you need to ask yourself in conclusion is, do you want to work these long work hours? Will it really pay off when you take into account high tax and inflation? It's getting harder and harder to start your career in finance. It's still required long hours for pay that really isn't keeping up with, as I say, the cost of living. You have slower career progression because you have boomer bosses in positions of power. You have a lot of DEI hires, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Lots of gender equality hiring. You have plenty of people in the finance industry, like you probably see in the airline industry and other tech industry, where people are just being hired not only because they know someone senior in a position of power, but they're the favored demographic on the basis of their race and gender. They're given favorable treatment. Maybe they want to hire 50% women and 50% men, and then you end up seeing people who are being hired on the basis of their gender, not on their ability to do their job, and the inefficiencies and mistakes they make, you have to pick up the slack for that. And then you've got other situations where people might be getting these high paying jobs, but they don't know if they're going to be laid off at any moment. They might be 30, 35, 40 with a wife and 2 kids, a high mortgage with high interest rates, and then all of a sudden they lose their job, their high paying, high status career, puts everything in jeopardy, their relationship, their ability to pay off their mortgage, their home, potentially dealing with foreclosures. It's a very unstable time. So my career advice to Gen Z would be to build a good skill stack, consider your side income, and consider whether a conventional 9 to 5 that is lower stress than a finance job or a major corporate America job, right? And consider, okay, well, maybe if I work a standard 9 to 5, I'll have more time to develop my skills, more time to develop alternative income sources in the evenings, on the weekends, more time to do maybe more investments and consider your investment opportunities. And you can reach financial independence and retire early a bit quicker by considering these alternative options. Yes, maybe your salary might be low compared to a high power finance job, but you'll be able to save and invest more, maybe live more unconventionally. For example, If you have two job options, a finance job at Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs that needs you to be in an office 5 days a week in London, earning a higher salary, but then you've got to pay for food and travel and other related expenses. But if you take a remote job at a smaller company for slightly less pay, you save a ton more money. You save money on food, you save money on travel, you're working from home, it's less stress, you have more time to yourself. As I say, you can focus on your other interests, right? And that might be the right solution for you. And that's why I advise Gen Z to consider, in certain circumstances, personal to you, consider avoiding corporate careers, considering alternative options so you can live life more on your terms and achieve your life goals, your financial goals, much quicker than sacrificing yourself for a company. If you're interested in this, I have a career advice service where I can give you some more guidance personalized to you to find the solutions that you need to avoid the trap of golden handcuffs, being trapped in a corporate career that might pay well but not give you the lifestyle that you want. Thanks for listening. There are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now. See you next time.